Today I'm going to explain chapter George Takes a Walk. So I'm going to start explaining. This is an extract taken from the humorous novel Three Men in a Boat. Actually, extracting part, this part of the story that has been taken from Three Men in a Boat, a humorous novel. Humorous means funny, comic novel written by celebrated British author Jerome K. Jerome, and that novel is written by very renowned celebrated author of British, and his name is Jerome K. Jerome. Here you will read about how George, who is the narrator's friend, leave home for work on a foggy winter dawn without realizing that his watch has stopped. Read on to enjoy this extract. Now there is one person and his name is George and he is the narrator's friend. And one day what happened to him? On a foggy winter morning, early in the morning, what happened? He started doing his work actually without realizing that his watch has stopped. Read on to enjoy this extract. Now, first line. I woke up at 6 next morning and found George awake too. Now narrator says that when he woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, he found his friend George. He also woke up. We both turned round and tried to go to sleep again, but we could not. They both tried to sleep once more, but they could not sleep. Had there been any particular reason why we should not have gone to sleep again? Now narrator says, for sleeping again we should have a very strong, genuine reason, but have got up and dressed then and there. So both the people, they got up and they dressed as well, then and there only. We should have dropped out while we were looking at our watches. Now narrator says want he should have dropped his watch when they were looking at their watches and have slept till, till 10 and they wanted to sleep till 10 o'clock as there was no earthly necessity for getting up under another 2 hours at a very least. And he says that there is no urgent, there is no requirement that they were going to wake up they were going to wake up for next 2 hours. Means what, they were going to have sleep for next 2 hours, and our getting up at that time was an utter absurdity. Absurdity means confusion, but when they woke up at that time they were completely confused. It was only in keeping with the annoying nature of the things that we should both feel that lying down for 5 minutes more would be death to us. And we were having very strange habit rather. What we should both feel that lying down, and they were feeling that if they are going to lie on the bed for 5 minutes more, that would be unbearable for them. Means if they were having time, so they used to wake up early, and if they are not having time they used to wake up late. Very strange habit. George said that the same kind of a thing, only words, had happened to him some 18 months ago. Now George started sharing his story that was happened with him 18 months ago when he was lodging by himself in the house of certain Mrs. Gipping. And that time, George, narrator's friend, he was staying in the house of Mrs. Gipping. He said his watch went wrong one evening and stopped at a quarter past 8. And George says that one evening rather, his watch was stopped at quarter past 8. Means what? 8:15. He did not know this at the time because some reason or other, and George could not realize that his watch was stopped. There was some reason or other. He forgot to wind it up when he went to bed, an unusual occurrence with him. Now, even he forgot to wind it up means what? He forgot to tighten tighten the watch. So he went to bed when he was going for a bed when he was going for sleeping. As we know that for maintaining our watch, we tight a screw of watches to make our watch run properly. And an unusual occurrence with him, that was a very strange thing because earlier he was doing that thing regularly and hung it up over his pillow without ever looking at things, and he kept rather that watch over the pillow without looking at it. It was in the winter when this happened, very near the shortest day of the year, and this incident happened in the winter season when the days were very short and a week of fog into the bargain. And at the same time, he says what we were having fog around us as well. So the fact that it was still very dark when George woke up in the morning was no guide to him as to time. So what happened when George woke up in the morning? There was no one to tell him that what was the exact time. He reached up and hauled down his watch. Now he reached towards the watch and he just grasped it, picked it up. It was quarter past 8, and the time the clock was showing quarter past 8. Angel and Minister of Grace defend us means what? He was showing surprise and he said this sentence, exclaimed George. Here have I go to in the city by 9. And he said what? He has to reach to the city by 9 o'clock. Why didn't somebody call me? Oh, this is a shame. And he's surprised why somebody did not call him. It's very shameful. And he flung the watch down and sprang. Now he threw his watch and jumped and sprang out of bed. He jumped out of the bed, had a cold bath, and washed himself and dressed himself and saved himself in a cold water because there was not time to wait for the hot. And they rushed and had another look at the watch. Now, what happened? He was bound to have cold water for bathing. He washed himself, he dressed himself, and he shaved as well with the same cold water because he was not having time to wait for hot. And then he rushed towards his watch and gave another look. Whether the shaking it had received in being thrown down on the bed had started it, or how it was, George could not say, but certain it was that from the quarter past 8 It had begun to go and now pointed to 20 minutes to 9. Narrator says that he was not sure because of because of the shaking or throwing when he threw that watch on the bed. It started working, or there was another reason he didn't know, but it was certain, it was sure that his watch started working and it was going further. And when he looked up, he looked at his watch. At that time it was showing 20 minutes to 9, means it was 9:40, sorry, 8:40. George snatched it up and rushed downstairs. In the sitting room, all was dark and silent. Now he picked up his watch, started running, and when he reached to the sitting room, everything was quiet. There was no fire, no breakfast. George said it was a shame of Mr. G, and he made up his mind to tell her what he thought of her when he came home in the evening. Now, what happened? Even he was surprised and he was blaming to Mrs. Gipping, and he thought, he said to himself, when he would come back by the evening, he would complain about this behavior, this arrangement rather. Then he dashed on a great coat, hat, and seizing umbrella made for front door. Now suddenly he picked up his great coat, sort long coat, long woolen coat, and then he picked up his umbrella and he started running towards the front door. The door was not even unbolted, so the door was closed. George thought that Mrs. Kipping was a lazy woman and that it was very strange that people could not get up at a decent, respectable time. And he thought that Mr. Gipping was a lazy man, and he was thinking about the people, that the people are very, very lazy, very strange, that they are not waking up at a respectable time, means what, acceptable time at which the most hardworking people get up. He unlocked the door and unbolted the door and ran out. And he came out of the door. He ran hard for a quarter of a mile. He hardly reached to the quarter of the mile, and at end of that distance it began to burn in upon him as a strange and curious thing that there were so few people about. Now what happened? Suddenly he realized that there were very few people on the street or on the road, and that there were no shop open. It was certainly a very dark and foggy morning, but still it seemed an unusual course to stop all business on that account. He said he said that obviously it was a very dark and foggy morning, but he felt very strange when he found that no shop was open, and he was blaming every person why they did not stop their business. For this reason, this foggy weather, he had to go to business, he had to complete his work. Why should other people stop in bed, and merely because it was dark and foggy, and he was blaming other people why these people stop themselves in this mere a small dark and foggy weather to do their work. At length he reached Holborn, not a shutter was down. Now what happened? When he reached to the Holborn is the city central, actually an area in central London. There he found that no shop was opened, not a bus was about. There were three men inside, one of whom was a policeman, a market cart full of cabbages and a dilapidated looking cab. When he reached over there, he found three. One was a policeman and one man. He was carrying cabbages in the cart, and he got one dilapidated, miss what, almost damaged looking cab. George pulled out his watch and looked at it. It was 5 minutes to 9, and when he looked at his watch, he found that it was 5 minutes left to 9. He stood still and counted his pulse. He was very tired. He was counting his heartbeats rather. He stooped down and felt his leg, and now he was feeling his legs as well when he bent down. Then, with this watch still in his hand, he went up to the policeman. He reached to the policeman and asked him if he knew what the time was. And he asked the time from that policeman. "What's the time?" said the man, eyeing George up and down with the evident suspicion. Now that person, the policeman, he started first. He said, "What's the time?" And then he started checking, looking very doubtfully to the judge. "Why, if you listen, you will hear it strike." And then he said, "Why you are asking? Now you are going to listen it." Because there was a tower, rather, clock tower, which is struck. George listened, and the neighboring clock immediately obliged. And George at once listened the clicking sound of the tower clock. "But it's only gone 3," said George in an injured tone when it had finished. When the clicking of the tower clock Miss Watt stopped, George said, "It's 3 o'clock only." "Well, and how many did you want it to go?" replied the constable. Constable replied, "Which time do you want instead of it?" "Why 9?" said George, showing his watch. He said, "What? It should be 9 o'clock." After showing his watch. "Do you know where you live?" said guardian of the public order severely. Means what? Seriously, he said, "What? Where do you know where do you live?" That policeman. George thought and gave the address. Now George thought over it and then gave his address. "Oh, that where it isn't it?" replied the man. Then he said, "What? That's why it should be there only. You should go, and you take my advice and go there quietly and take that watch of yours with you." And he said, "What? Go back to your home quietly and take back your watch as well, without making any chaos. And don't let have any more of it." Means now just finish this matter here only. And George went home again and musing as he walked along. George, when he was going back, he was thinking as well. Music means what? Thinking. He was thinking over and let himself in, and he went inside his house. At first, when he got in, he determined to undress and go to bed again, but when he thought of the redressing, when he reached to his room, first he wanted to undress himself and wanted to go back to his bed again. But when he thought about redressing and rewashing and having of another bath, he determined he would not, but would sit up and go to sleep in a easy chair. So what happened? He decided not to have. He should first. He will have the bathing as well once more. So he decided not to go there for all this thing. He decided to go to his easy chair to sleep over there for the time being. But he could not get to sleep. He never felt more wakeful in his life. And he could not sleep on that easy chair, and he was feeling that this was happening first time in his life when he was so much wakeful. So he lit the lamp and got out of the chessboard. He reached to his chessboard after lighting up the lamp and played himself a game of chess, and there he started playing game of chess. But even that did not enliven him. Even what the chess game did not give him any interest. It seemed slow somehow, so he gave chess and tried to read. Now he gave up, he stopped playing chess and he started reading books. He did not seem able to make any sort of interest in reading either. So he put on his coat again and went out for a walk. Even he was not getting any interest in reading as well, so he take on his coat and again went out for a walk. It was horribly lonesome and dismal, and all the policemen men he met regarded him with the undisguised suspicion. Now it was very horrible because that was looking very quiet and boring, and all the policemen who met him earlier they started having doubt on him and turned their lantern on him and followed him about, and this had such an effect upon him at last that he began to feel as if he really had done something wrong. And those policemen they showed their lanterns towards him, and at last George started realizing that he has made some mistake, and he got to slinking down by the street and hiding in the dark doorways. Now he started hiding himself, he started walking very quietly and quickly, and he was trying to hide himself in the doorways. When he heard the regulation flip flop approaching, when he heard the sound of feet of the policeman, of course, this conduct made the force only more distrustful of him than ever. And because of this activity, when he was hiding himself, this that made policemen more doubtful at him, and they would come and rout him out. And so they would came over there and they would pick him out and ask him what he was doing there, and they would ask what he was doing there. And when he answered, nothing. He had merely come out for the stroll. It was then 4 o'clock in the morning. And he would answer, I would not come for here. I came here for nothing but as for simple strolling, simple walking. And that time it was 4 o'clock only. They looked as though they did not believe him. And the two plainclothes constable came home with him to see if he really did live where he had said he did. Now, two policemen came with that George and he started checking his living place, set place of home, whether he lives over there or not. They saw him go in with his key, and then they took up position opposite and watched the house. Now, when policemen they realized that what he was going inside with his key, so what happened? They took their position opposite to the home, and they were giving a look to that house. He thought he would light the fire when he got inside and make himself some breakfast just to pass away the time, but he did not seem able to handle anything from a scuttleful of coals to a teaspoon without dropping it or falling over it. Now, what happened when he entered first? He thought that he should light up the fire and he should make some breakfast as well for himself so he could spare his time. But when he thought about the coal, the handling of coal, and he thought when he would handle, when you take pieces of coal, they would drop upon the ground or they would fall over him as well, and that would make a noise as well, and such a noise that he was in a mortal fear that would wake Mrs. G. Kippin. And he thought, what, due to the noise of falling of course that would wake Mrs. Gipping, and she would think it were burglars and open the window and call the police, and she would think that these things these things are being done by the burglars, so she would open her window and she would call police. Then these two detectives would rush in and handcuff him. So these two policemen would come in and they would catch him, handcuff him, arrest him, and march him off to the police court, and they would take him to the police court. He was in morbidly nervous, completely nervous state by this time, and he pictured the trial, and he was imagining the trial of the court as well. He's trying to explain the circumstances to the jury and nobody believing him, and he's being sentenced to 20-year penal servitude. And there he was imagining that he was justifying, he was explaining to the judges, but nobody was there to believe him, and he imagined that he got 20 years imprisonment. The penal servitude means what? Imprisonment where you have to do physical work. So he gave up trying to get breakfast and wrapped himself up in his overcoat. So he left the idea of having breakfast and he wrapped himself around his overcoat and sat in the easy chair till Mrs. Gipping came down at 7:30, and he was sitting there like that only till Mrs. Gipping, she reached over there, she reached to him at 7:30, means or 7:30. He said he had never got up too early since that morning. And then George said that what, he never wake up he never woke up after that incident early in the morning. It had been such a warning to him because that incident was a kind of a warning for him. So this story is written by Jerome K. Jerome, and I request from you people to just subscribe my channel and share these videos to your friend as well.